our people that we selected to help us out are selling us out.
From Roseland to Brighton Park, residents are not backing down in the battle over migrant encampments in their neighborhoods.
Move over, kids. Migrants are taking over your neighborhood football field in Chicago in favor of a new shelter for illegal immigrants, and residents are outraged.
In a city known for welcoming all, the situation in Chicago takes a dramatic turn. The citizens, now fuming with anger and despair against the new coming migrants, speak up against Mayor Brandon Johnson and the government as a whole.
We say no. We say no. The mayor sold us out. The alderwoman sold us out.
Nobody asked us. Nobody told us. We have more than few thousand people who signed a signature here who said no. We said no.
Rage about the city's use of the taxpayers' money and the unsafe streets children have to walk have driven many Chicagoans to a state of fury.
When do citizens of the United States of America come first?
This bold step challenges the Windy City's promise of shelter. With laws that guarantee shelter for those in need, the city faces a real test, managing this surge without turning its back on its citizens. It's a moment that asks, what happens when the Windy City meets a logistical nightmare? The city's budget is already tense, sparking debate among city officials and leaders about the cause of action. Stay with us as we delve deeper into Chicago's migrant crisis. Why are Chicagoans angry?
Community members feel they've been kept in the dark, and a big question remains, is the land even safe?
Anger is boiling over in the Windy City, and here's why. Chicagoans are up in arms, pointing fingers at Mayor Brandon Johnson and the Biden administration.
These South and West Side homeowners are angry. They believe the city has overextended itself and should be putting the tens of millions of dollars earmarked for migrants into Chicago's most vulnerable neighborhoods.
But the South Side has been under-resourced, underfunded for years, for decades. We have schools that need to be reopened.
The crux of their frustration, they believe migrants are being placed at the front of the line, receiving funds that they argue should be earmarked for public services vital to the city's residents. But the grievances don't stop there. Safety, a fundamental concern for any community, is now under the microscope. Residents report feeling increasingly unsafe on their own streets, attributing this unease to the influx of migrants, many of whom are men, with a troubling portion identified as criminals. These migrants put the lives of Chicago's citizens at great risk.
A divided city council has approved $51 million in migrant crisis funding.
Looking at a little over a year's time frame between October of last year and today, the city claims it's paid $138 million to various vendors.
The discontent spirals further when discussing tax dollars and especially where they're going, and more importantly, where they're not. The sentiment among the locals is clear. Their hard-earned money seems to be diverting away from its intended purposes, raising questions about priorities and decision-making at the city's helm.
Move-in day for local migrants. It's happening right now at an old Chicago public school building.
Chicago police, as you can see right behind me, they've been here monitoring the scene after a group of protesters tried to block migrants from moving in.
Schools, cornerstones of any thriving society, are also at the heart of this controversy. The decision to use educational institutions as housing for migrants has sparked outrage. For many, schools should focus on nurturing the next generation, not serving as makeshift shelters.
It was a shock. We cannot financially afford it. The city of Joliet nor the township can afford this type of expense for a community.
The state recently announced Joliet would be receiving $8.6 million for shelter, housing, and health care, not for its residents, but for migrants.
Suburbia isn't immune to the unrest either.
How about this? Give them all these politicians' addresses and put them in their backyards, in their basements, in their houses.
The idea of migrants living next door has stirred up a not-in-my-backyard sentiment among Chicagoans, leading to pointed questions about whether politicians would welcome such arrangements in their neighborhoods.
Already this week, 41 buses have rolled into Chicago. That means there are now 11,000 migrants living in shelters. 4,000 are still sleeping on police station floors and staying at the airport.
9 more buses carrying people arrived in Chicago today.
With hundreds of buses rolling into Chicago, filled to the brim with migrants, the question on everyone's lips is simple. Why is this happening? And what does it mean for the future of Chicago? Stay tuned as we dive deeper into this complex issue, unraveling the threads of discontent weaving through the heart of one of America's most iconic cities. The influx of migrants.
7 buses of migrants will arrive in Chicago today. This follows the at least 7 coach buses full of migrants that arrived in Chicago yesterday. In fact, just a few minutes ago, another coach bus full of migrants pulled up right beside us.
Picture this. Hundreds of buses, each one filled to capacity, rolling into Chicago. It's not a scene from a movie, it's happening right now. The city is now at the center of a migrant surge that's capturing national attention. But who are these new arrivals? Predominantly men, a detail that's raising eyebrows and concerns alike. And amidst them, a troubling percentage have been identified as criminals, casting a shadow over the influx and fueling the fire of public debate. Why Chicago, you might ask? The city's status as a sanctuary city is a magnet, attracting migrants with the promise of protection and support. But this open-door policy is not without its critics. As the numbers swell, so too do the voices of those questioning the impact on local resources, community safety, and the city's overall well-being. The man behind Texas's controversial decision to send these buses, Governor Abbott, argues it's a response to federal immigration policies.
There's only one reason why this is happening, and that's because Joe Biden has eliminated all of the 4 policies that Donald Trump put in place that led to the lowest illegal border crossings in 40 years.
Joe Biden is not doing his job. Joe Biden is responsible for the largest amount of illegal immigration in the history of the United States.
But whatever the politics, the reality on the ground is undeniable. Chicago is grappling with an unprecedented challenge, one that's testing the city's infrastructure, patience, and resolve. Residents are feeling the squeeze, with some even considering packing up and leaving.
We respectfully ask that this chamber respects the order and decorum of this body of government.
Public comment became heated as residents and aldermen disagreed on how taxpayer dollars should be used.
Driven away by the growing pressures on housing, public services, and safety. It's a pivotal moment for Chicago as it navigates the complexities of being a sanctuary city in an era of intense migration debates. Though as the buses keep coming, Chicago stands at a crossroads. How will it respond? And what does this mean for the future of a city that prides itself on its diversity and resilience? Stay with us as we delve deeper into the migrant surge that's reshaping the face of Chicago. The housing challenges.
With more than 15,000 new arrivals in the past year, city leaders say the #1 priority is getting people out of police stations. Right now, the largest housing effort is a $29 million plan to establish tent base camps ahead of the winter.
Chicago, already bustling and densely populated, is now confronting a housing crisis of unprecedented scale. The cause, an unrelenting surge of migrants, each in search of a place to call home in the Windy City. But here's the catch. There's simply not enough room at the inn.
With some of the worst winter weather we've seen in a while, only hours away, more than 500 migrants are still waiting for shelter space in Chicago. 239 migrants are staying in warming buses at the city's landing zone, and 3 more charter buses from Texas expected to arrive in the city today.
Housing these newcomers is becoming an impossible puzzle to solve. The costs? Astronomical. The logistics? A nightmare. And the consequences? They're unfolding on the streets of Chicago for everyone to see. As winter's chill grips the city, a startling sight becomes increasingly common. Migrants with no roof over their heads other than their thin plastic tents, forced to sleep in the bitter cold. Police stations, never designed for such a purpose, are now makeshift shelters, crowded and strained beyond their limits.
This meeting at Richard J. Daley College comes as the city, starting as early as this weekend, prepares to use this gymnasium until August 1st, and 2 auxiliary classrooms on the campus through the end of November to shelter more than 400 migrants.
Then there's the issue of schools. Yes, schools. These institutions, meant to be sanctuaries of learning, are being repurposed as emergency housing. It's a controversial solution, sparking debates about priorities and the future of education in Chicago. But perhaps the most visible sign of this crisis are the tents.
This is exactly the situation city leaders and migrants feared. There are thousands of asylum seekers sleeping on sidewalks all over the city.
Sprawling across sidewalks and parks, they're more than just canvas and poles. They're symbols of a city struggling to cope. For residents, these encampments are a daily reminder of safety concerns and a quality of life that seems to be slipping away. In the face of these challenges, one question looms large. How can Chicago navigate this housing crisis? With every empty bed filled and every shelter stretched to its limits, the city searches for answers in an increasingly desperate situation. So as Chicago grapples with the realities of this housing crunch, the eyes of the nation watch closely. Will the Windy City find a way to weather this storm? Only time will tell. But one thing's for certain, the road ahead is fraught with challenges. The government's response.
I know folks may have questions about my style, but don't question my leadership.
In the midst of a city on edge, the spotlight turns to those at the helm, Mayor Brandon Johnson and the Biden administration. With Chicago caught in the throes of a migrant surge, all eyes are on the government's response.
Let me say again, to any country, any organization, anyone thinking of taking advantage of this situation, I have one word: don't. Don't. Our hearts may be broken, but our resolve is clear.
And let's just say, opinions are as varied as the city's famous pizza toppings. First up, Mayor Johnson.
This is a global crisis. It's affecting us all. These are asylum seekers. These are not illegal people. The moment they step on American soil, they are now officially protected by international law.
The mayor's doubling down on the importance of helping the asylum seekers.
In the face of mounting pressures, his approach has been scrutinized, dissected, and debated. Critics argue that the response has been too slow, too lenient, perhaps even misguided. Supporters, on the other hand, see a leader trying to balance humanity with practicality in an impossible situation. Then there's the Biden administration, caught in a national debate over immigration policy and its impact on cities like Chicago.
I would, in fact, make sure that we immediately surge to the border. All those people are seeking asylum. They deserve to be heard. That's who we are. We're a nation that says if you want to flee and you're fleeing oppression, you should come.
The federal response? A mix of support and directives that aim to address the root causes, but often feel distant from the day-to-day realities on the city streets. But wait, there's a wild card in this political drama. Governor Abbott of Texas.
Before anybody gets on a bus and goes anywhere, they go voluntarily. They self-identify what city they want to go to. The only place that they are typically going to are cities that self-identify as sanctuary cities, which may be one of the reasons why some of the migrants choose to go there.
His decision to send migrants to sanctuary cities has thrown a proverbial grenade into the mix, challenging both local and federal leaders to confront the consequences head-on. Amidst this backdrop, the question of how to fix this crisis looms larger than ever. Close the borders? Ramp up support? The answers are as complex as the problem itself, with each proposed solution sparking a new set of debates and discussions. As Chicago navigates these turbulent waters, the government's response is under the microscope. Will their strategies provide the relief the city so desperately needs? Or will the challenges continue to mount, pushing Chicago to its limits? This story is far from over, and as the government crafts its next moves, the world watches and waits. Will the Windy City find a way through this storm, or will the pressures prove too great? Only time will tell, but one thing's for sure. The decisions made today will shape Chicago's tomorrow. National impact.
There will not be another foot of wall constructed in my administration.
As Chicago grapples with its migrant surge, the ripple effects are felt far beyond the city limits, casting a spotlight on a national dilemma that's stirring up coast to coast, from the bustling streets of New York City to the far corners of the United States. The impact of this crisis is profound, raising questions about policy, humanity, and the very fabric of American society.
Tens of thousands of migrants that have made their way into this country have come to New York.
New York City, much like Chicago, finds itself at the epicenter of a similar storm. Overflowing shelters, stretched resources, and heated debates mirror the challenges facing the Windy City, highlighting a shared struggle that's become a focal point of the national dialogue. But what does this mean for the country as a whole? The situation lays bare a complex web of issues: immigration policy, federal and local government responsibilities, and the capacity of cities to handle influxes of migrants. It's a test of America's infrastructure, values, and vision for the future.
And let's also come together on immigration. Make it a bipartisan issue once again.
Critics warn that without a cohesive strategy and decisive action, the crisis could mark a significant downfall for urban centers across the nation. They argue that the strain on resources, public services, and community cohesion poses a threat not just to the cities directly affected, but to the broader stability and prosperity of the United States. Enter Donald Trump.
We're going to build the wall. We have no choice. We have no choice. Build that wall. Build that wall. Build that wall.
Donald Trump, meanwhile, in Eagle Pass on the Rio Grande River, calling it a very dangerous border, saying President Biden is to blame.
The former president has been vocal in his critique, viewing the crisis as a failure of current immigration policies and leadership. Trump emphasizes the need for stronger borders and stricter immigration controls, framing the situation as a critical juncture for the nation's security and identity. So as America watches and waits, the questions loom large. How will the country navigate this challenge? What lessons can be learned from cities like Chicago and New York? And crucially, how will the responses shape the future of a nation built on the promise of opportunity and refuge? The migrant crisis, then, is more than a series of local emergencies. It's a moment of national reflection, a test of resolve, and a defining chapter in the ongoing story of America, a story that continues to unfold in real time, on streets and in homes across the country. How to fix the crisis?
The other thing I say to President Biden, close the borders now.
In a city grappling with a crisis unlike any other, the burning question on everyone's mind is simple yet profound. How do we fix this? As Chicago faces an unprecedented migrant surge, solutions are as sought after as a rare diamond, and just as hard to come by. One popular refrain echoes through the streets and the halls of power alike: close the borders. It's a straightforward proposition aimed at stemming the tide of new arrivals. Proponents argue it's the first necessary step to regain control and focus on solutions without the pressure of constant new entries. But is it enough? Then there's the matter of funding. Money talks, especially in a crisis. Redirecting funds, increasing support for housing, and bolstering public services are all on the table. The idea? Make sure the city's resources match the scale of its challenges, ensuring that both migrants and residents have access to the basics: shelter, safety, and stability. But what about the long term? Strategies are shifting towards integration and community support. From job creation to language classes, the goal is to transform this challenge into an opportunity. By helping migrants become active, contributing members of the community, the hope is to ease tensions and build a stronger, more cohesive society. Governor Abbott's stance, pushing for stricter immigration controls, adds another layer to the debate. It's a national issue, playing out on Chicago's streets, highlighting the need for comprehensive immigration reform that addresses both the causes and the effects of this surge. So as Chicago searches for answers, the path forward is fraught with complexity. Solutions require cooperation, creativity, and a commitment to both immediate needs and future resilience.
Tonight, thousands of migrants spending what could be their final weeks in shelters across Chicago as the city's eviction deadline looms.
The crisis has tested Chicago's spirit, but in the face of adversity, there's a growing resolve. This isn't just about managing a migrant surge, it's about reimagining what it means to be a community in the modern world. As the Windy City looks to the horizon, the message is clear. The time for action is now. Conclusion. As the sun sets on a city at the heart of a national conversation, the saga of Chicago and its migrant surge draws not to a close, but to a critical juncture.
That's the simple solution, is no, turn the buses around.
This is what these kids need for this community. We got violence, we got poverty, we already getting scrapped. Why do we always got to be at the bottom of the barrel? I want Mayor Brandon Johnson to understand that you're selling us out for people who can't vote.
The streets, the people, the very fabric of the community have been tested in ways unimaginable. Yet, amidst the turmoil, a story of resilience, debate, and determination unfolds. Chicagoans from every walk of life have voiced their concerns, their fears, and their hopes. They've questioned policies, scrutinized leaders, and sought solutions. And through it all, one thing remains clear. The path forward is neither simple nor singular. The issues at stake, safety, resources, integration, are complex, intertwined with national policies and global realities. Yet the spirit of Chicago, with its rich history of diversity and resilience, shines through. This crisis has sparked a conversation, a dialogue about what it means to be a sanctuary city, about the balance between compassion and capacity, about the vision for a city's future. The government's response, the community's reaction, and the ongoing debates offer a glimpse into the challenges and opportunities that lie ahead. Solutions are being sought, strategies debated, and actions taken. But the road ahead is long, and the journey is collective. As we look to the future, one thing is certain. Chicago's story is not just about a migrant surge. It's about the heart of a city, the strength of its people, and the enduring quest for a community that upholds the values of inclusion, safety, and prosperity for all. So as the Windy City faces the winds of change, its resolve remains unwavering. This chapter in Chicago's history is far from over, but with each step forward, the city writes a new narrative, a narrative of hope, of challenge, and of a community striving to find its way in an ever-changing world.